welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Spencer and Larry, and we're going to be discussing 1883 episode number 4, The Crossing. It was interesting that they decided to do a 2 episode story arc, all revolved around crossing a river. Like that literally almost 2 hours of content just for that storyline. But when you get to the end of this episode and you sort of have the sequence of the actual crossing, you understand why, the significance of the event. Uh, there's a line where they say, once we go across, there's no going back. And 100%, like there is no going back. This is the moment in which this group is essentially baptized literally into this new life. And oh, Coral? Is that Coral or is that?
Well, that's not my house.
Oh, that's Spencer. Um,
It's definitely McGruff.
McGruff. But it's interesting about a sidebar. Does no one has a pet? You would think somebody would have like a little bird or a dog or.
That's true. That
I
would have
just
stopped
thought
that
about
one.
it. Yeah, no one has a pet on the show.
That might have stopped that one guy from being torn apart by dogs episode ago.
But yeah, well, what are your guys? I mean, I thought it was a solid episode. A little slow in the beginning, but once we get to the end, I'm starting to understand why and sort of the pacing of the episode. But um, yeah, the fact that they gave us a 2 episode arc on crossing a river.
I was
Yeah,
just mad there's no water moccasins. Like,
Oh, there were.
all these all these old, I think I look back at Lonesome Dove and there's all these westerns, and I've been in lakes and rivers and there's water moccasins fucking everywhere. And for them to be in, I guess, northern Texas by this point, because it's only been what, 14 episodes and they haven't fucking made it out of Texas yet.
Yeah, no, they're still.
And
Yeah.
so for them to, still be in Texas and them not to run into water moccasins is crazy to me. Although the girl did get bit in the ass by a snake, but I'm not sure what kind of snake that was, I guess. But it, the pacing behind this whole season, I think, is intentional almost, where it's this long, drawn out, like kind of hard, drudging. It, it's just going to be painful, and it. I just feel like it's not Oregon Trail, but it's trying to make you feel like this journey is real life, and it's so treacherous and difficult that it. I don't think they're trying to make it treacherous and difficult to get through, but I think it's they're trying to, the weight of what all these people are going through, they're trying to make you feel that as well, and I think that they're doing a good job with that. Because, I mean, we talked about it beforehand. Me and Larry were both saying the beginning of this episode, you're like, ugh, this is starting to get to be too much. It's just boring. And then all of a sudden, the music kind of kicks in, and uh, the daughter comes back and she's, playing on the piano. And then all the shit hits the fan, and you're like, oh my God, everyone dies. Not everyone, but there's so many people that don't make it. And you're just like, holy shit. And we talked about this prior to crossing a river. Like, who would have thought that crossing a river was that treacherous of a thing to do?
right. Yeah, it was. It was absurd how hard that was from, and how many people were lost just trying to cross a river. Like I could imagine the Colonel losing it if they just encounter another river too soon on this journey, and if crossing a river was this intense for them, they keep talking about winter. They've been talking about winter since the first episode. Uh, you know, how hard is that going to be on them? How rough are things going to get during winter? I imagine it's just going to turn into The Shining essentially at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, as you said, they've been building that up this whole time, and they even referenced it in this episode a little bit where they were talking about butchering one of the cows for food, and they were like, we don't have a proper butcher, therefore we would waste a lot of the meat. And he's like, this is the time we got to fatten up because it's we're going to be starving later. But the on the slower part of the episode, it was basically building relationships, specifically two, and then also reinforcing. I guess we'll start with the relationships, and then we'll go to the conflict. But we have Elsa and the cowboy. I don't know his name. I'm just going to call him the cowboy. But continuation of that relationship, which they've been setting up. They're full on a couple at this point. It's fine. I like the whole getting pants and that whole little sequence and trading and everything. I thought that was all nice little opening. But that relationship's full steam ahead. Probably will go bad because one, if not both, will probably die. We'll see how it pans out. But any thoughts? I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on those two at this point.
I feel like that's definitely going to go bad because I mean we're listening to her musings or her journal or whatever, as the narration, and it all sounds very depressing. So I'm definitely assuming that guy's going to die. I don't see him making it through. He's not very smart for one, so there's a number of ways he could go. And this show, just the tone of it and the sense of dread and everything, it definitely feels like more of a tragedy than anything. I doubt there'll be any happy endings.
I think that they're going to be all happy endings. I think by the end of it. No, I don't know. And we've talked about this in past reviews. I mean, we haven't done a lot for this show just yet because there hasn't been a lot of episodes. But with the cowboy himself, I just call him Florida Georgia Line because he looks like one of the dudes. But I don't know whether or not he'll make it. I don't know whether or not he'll be a dad. But I don't know who it is that's going to carry this family line forward because the fact that it is the Duttons would lead me to believe during this time frame, once again, that it's a male lined name. So even if he is the dad or if he's one of the ones to help take this line forward, he's not going to make it because it's not his last name. He's not a Dutton. So I don't know if it's going to be the son that they end up following here shortly. If she is just kind of the one that is narrating this from beyond the grave and she doesn't even make, I don't know. But I don't think that the cowboy is going to play a long-term kind of character in this because I think that he right now is a love interest, but this may be what jades her even more is she finally falls in love with this dude and then he dies.
Can you play a happier one? That was the best line of the episode. Go ahead, Larry. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just thinking like it could be even sadder than that. Things may not turn out well for her because, I was thinking about it. We may be listening to like her writings or whatnot, but who's to say that she's the one reading them if it's not someone reading an old journal left behind by her? So things could go bad for her as well.
Dude, I hope the last episode is Kevin Costner reading the journal. That'd be great. The other relationship is Thomas and the gypsy. You said Numi or Naomi? We tried looking up her name.
Yeah, it's Noemi, and I just assumed that Naomi because it's kind of what it sounded like they said, but I don't know.
But she's looking at Thomas. She made him a little dinner, a little soup, and basically expressing interest. He seems to be interested in her too, but he's like, look, they say this is a free country, but they're definitely that is not 100% accurate, and That was another thing I liked about this episode. The first three never really addressed racism at all. And I'm not saying the show needs to be all about racism, but racism's a thing, and it's part. It's there. And this episode, Thomas was going into that and basically saying, from slavery to, yes, the Civil War happened, but it doesn't mean equality came with it. And so he was basically explaining that to her, and she was like, whatever, she's still interested. And yet again, that storyline, who knows how that's going to play out. But I think when they introduced her character, I didn't think initially that she was going to be a major character, but now clearly she is one of the main characters. So any thoughts on the Thomas Naomi relationship?
Wouldn't that be something if it was only a happy story for Thomas?
Everything works out for Thomas.
Everything works out. It's Thomas reading this diary. That's what the show's about.
I'd be okay with that.
Like he's reading it to his kids.
I don't know, because I'm trying to find that character who's going to get a happy ending, because even this show Yellowstone is kind of soap opera-y. It's a Western, but it's built around this story and this family, and my wife's
betrayal and
she's
drama.
watching the whole dynasty thing, which dude,
that's in Texas too, right?
It's set in Atlanta ish.
The new, really?
Yeah, the new one.
Oh, okay.
Because they always talk about going to Atlanta and stuff, and I'm like, there's no Atlanta, Texas. But I mean, there might be shit, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
they're living all the way out there, but they just really want to go to Atlanta. It's like a dream vacation.
They just fly to Atlanta all the time. But it's funny because it's very dramatic, over the top. But Yellowstone is that kind of country Western style show, but it's just got a dramatic flair to it. And this, although it's like the prequel to it, it's not melodramatic. It's just very dark. And for me, to have a happy ending for Naomi and Thomas, it just wouldn't feel like what they've shown us for this show so far. Now, they may end up doing something like that, to where there's a couple characters who end up in Montana with good Lord, what is the daughter's name that we keep?
Elsa.
Elsa, that's right. And Elsa being the narrator kind of character, she may end up in Montana with Thomas and a couple other people. I would like to see people who carry over, characters who carry over, but shit, who knows who's going to carry over and who isn't.
Yeah, and now we got even more questions if the show's taking place, around Atlanta right now, though. That like does the cowboy just kind of go to hell with this? I'm going back to Georgia and right off, or how does that happen? Like, but
now you're talking about the other show.
Oh, the other spin-off show. I was gonna say, I was like, I'm very confused about this. Like, why is it called Yellowstone? Like, but yeah, it's one of those things where Thomas may actually find a better life out west, and we still haven't seen a lot about his past. But I do feel like there may be some trouble with him, given that him and Elsa's father seem like they're gonna butt heads at some point in this journey, because he keeps talking about it.
Well, let's segue. That was my very next topic, is the conflict. And that conflict is, we got, I think, a little more taste of what it's about. And the father being James Dutton, him and Shay, or Sam Elliott, keep butting heads. And clearly Sam Elliott is the one that's supposed to be in charge. And Thomas is getting irritated because in his mind, look, there's sort of a chain of command and it needs to be followed. And James is just not playing ball. He's doing his own thing. And Thomas is the one that wants to enforce it. He has that line, let me talk to him. Let me take care of this. But the thing that I thought was most interesting in that exchange was This is the first time we've seen. We know these are all military guys. We know the Civil War, all that, but James brought up that he had rank and that he was a soldier, and he sort of, I don't know, he bucked up on Sam Elliott and was throwing rank around like, I don't know if there's some kind of grudge there. Obviously, these two guys were on the opposite sides of that war, so we still have a lot of questions about James's um, military background. We've only got a little taste of it in an episode. We know he was in a prison for several years, so maybe there's some kind of anger there. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's he talks so little that they don't really give you an idea of what his particular beef is. Like you said, is it being on the opposite end of the war, or is it just being tired of the military life, given what happened, and not wanting to be a little freer than he was previously, especially given his time in prison? It's still very hard to say with him because he's certainly not saying.
I don't know. Initially I thought when he had that character building episode when he went out with his son and they went hunting and all these things, I was kind of hoping for that redeemable quality in him. He hugged his daughter. She came back and was on her side. But the more he's been around, like the bigger asshole he's become, and I'm just like, I don't like his character direction. Like I liked him initially. I thought, he's doing the right thing. He's doing the thing he has to do for his family. But the more he kind of pushes everybody away and isolates his family, I feel it's less of a redeemable quality where he's just looking out for his family, and it's more of a stubborn kind of shitty attitude that he's, by isolating himself from everyone else, it's almost like dooming his family. And instead of, I feel like he's doing the right thing, I feel like he's eventually fucking them over.
It does feel that way, and but like you said, and you start to like the guy less and less, but it's very real, isn't it? Because I think we all kind of know that guy where they're a jerk to everybody, but then you see them in their family life, and you're like, who is this person? Because when they're at work or wherever it is you socialize with them, they're not this guy. They're not this person they are with their family. So it's a very real characteristic, but hopefully there's more to why he's this complete asshole.
Yeah, I think they'll give us a little more. We got the flashback or the dream actually with Shay, in the war, and definitely PTSD, and that was a great line where he was like, he hates sleeping because of the nightmares, and then Thomas is like, well, sleep was the escape growing up.
Who?
Thomas.
Do you talk about Sam Elliott, or is that who you're talking about?
Yes.
we don't call him Shay. We call him Sam Elliott.
But I thought that was an interesting the dialogue in that scene, where I thought was really well done.
Yeah, it was a good scene, and it outlines, just sort of a big part of why Thomas is who he is, and where a lot of that toughness comes from, and and they're doing a good job, I think, of showing you how the war affected both Shay and James. You're getting two different sides of this conflict of, they kind of mirror each other in a very real way.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, go ahead.
It's one of those things where we don't get to see a lot of the way that war affects people because, outside of the Civil War, we look at World War One, World War Two, Vietnam, even as recent as, Afghanistan and everything else, we only see what affects our troops just because it's not both sides, whereas the Civil War was Americans versus Americans. It was both sides were us. So the PTSD and the way that everything is affected is on both sides, it was our sides. It was both Americans. So how it's affecting them is different, but very similar in the same time.
Yeah, and I also like that, they address it without putting a name on it, because they didn't have one for it back then, but those symptoms were
Yeah.
still there.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they were just like, "Oh, get over it," What are you what are you upset
Right.
about? Or,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's actually recent that we've taken the time to invest in the psychological damage of warfare. Um, the lead up to we talked about it at the beginning, but I want to go back into it because it was the bulk of what these two episodes were about, and that's the crossing. And we basically have a sequence in which they prepared. It's time to do it. They're very aware that not everybody's going to make it across. This is a big deal. And then we have the moment where they're like, you have to lighten your loads on your wagons. And it's a very intense sequence because these people are basically told, if you want to be with us, if you want to go to this new land, um, you have to sacrifice. And this is something you have to sacrifice. And, the guy has his instruments, his piano, and he's just like, that is who I am. I'm nothing. I'll be poor. And Sam Elliott basically tells him, I have the line. He's just like, you're not a carpenter. You're not a musician. You're pioneers. And you have the journey. That's it. And that's it. And he's just like, it's all or nothing. You're either completely committed to this trip or you're not. And so that obviously leads into the actual crossing. And then we have the sequence, which I saw it coming when she sat down at the piano. I was like, oh, we're going to get a montage of the back and forth of her playing the piano and then the crossing. But the most interesting thing about the crossing, and then I'll throw it to you guys, was so as crazy as it was, people drowning and dying, it was horrible. The fact that Margaret essentially had to, and I won't use the word kill somebody, but someone was panicking, they were dragging her down. It was do or die, and she had to basically push away and saw someone drown, and now she's got to live with this fact, and there's the moment where she's sitting there just sort of dealing with it, and her husband sees her and he lets her be. Her daughter sees her and she lets her be, and it's like now that's a part of her death, and I think that's going to be interesting going forward with that character. But the whole journey itself, from them having to lighten their loads to what Margaret went through, what are your thoughts?
I think Sam Elliott, because I'm not calling him Shay, uh, he said it pretty early on.
Call him Captain.
He said it pretty early on about, they talk about the lawlessness. There is no rules. There is no anything outside of Western society. It's basically just them and their journey. There is no laws. There is no rules. There's just, they talk about the lawless Wild West. You're not an American. You're not anything. It's you fighting to survive. And I think that this was the epitome of that, where you're not, a carpenter. You're not a musician. You're not any of these things. You are a human who is trying to make it from point A to point B, and you do anything you can to do that. And right now, if you don't sacrifice these things, you are not going to make it, and your profession is what is going to kill you. You want to take this 2,000-pound piano across this river, it is going to kill you. So you have to leave it here. That
I love that he got progressively angry as he saw more and more furniture. He's like, "What the fuck?" He saw like couches and bed. He's like, "What?" Like he got so mad each wagon.
Like, yeah, you needed this shrunk. You needed this heirloom.
He's like, I told you to pack light, and and they snuck all this crap. And they really didn't have an understanding as for why, and they're just like, yeah, okay, the horses aren't going to get that tired. They didn't understand they'd have to cross rivers, and that there'd be potentially other hazards down the road that we haven't seen yet, and didn't take them serious. Which again, realistic, because you tell people who aren't familiar with the thing, hey, look out for this. They still don't. But yeah, that guy, he is likely ruined because of that. It may have, we'll likely find later that would have been better for him to stay in whatever town they were in and play piano there because, like, where's he going to find a piano out west?
You better learn to make one. Get
He
that
better.
He's gonna
carpenter.
play the fucking xylophone.
See,
Well,
that,
go ahead.
that'd have been smarter if he like tried to sneak it in pieces, like it was in different wagons, and he paid off everyone to take it for him.
What did y'all think about Margaret throughout the entire episode, but specifically the ending?
Margaret. I'm
Dutton, James's wife.
Oh yeah, that.
Ew.
Yeah, that was like it was clear that she was going to have to make some sacrifices early on, especially, when James is talking to her about the situation they're in and everything and about them dragging her down. And I'm like, well, cuz you see that scene and you're thinking like, well, you know, even if she does get drugged down, James is going to shoot whoever does it if she doesn't manage to get away. So,
I was
you
thinking
know.
the exact same thing. I was waiting for bullets to start going.
Right.
Or if he had given her like a little dagger, he's like, just stab him.
Well, I mean, it was clear he wasn't going to let that happen because he's like, well, he wasn't going to let them drag her down one way or another because this whole journey to him is about his family, and he's made it very clear that that's the only thing he cares about.
I've been pleasantly surprised with how good of an actress she's been. Tim McGraw's been in a lot of other things. It's nothing that, as far as acting goes, I wasn't surprised with how well he's done throughout this series. But her, I don't know that uh, I've seen her in a whole lot of other things outside of them being each other's counterparts in uh, music videos, and I don't know that she's been in a whole lot of, just, I don't want to say movies, but I have not seen her in a whole lot of other syndicated kind of things where she had to play a part. And this, uh, I've been really surprised with how convincing of a character she's pulling off, because she's not just playing Tim McGraw's wife. She's not just playing Faith Hill. She's playing Margaret. She's playing Margaret Dutton, and the things that she's had to sacrifice and go through, and the character evolution that has happened in this very short period of time, she's pulling it off surprisingly well. And uh, I've been impressed with how well she's been able to convince me that she's Margaret Dutton and not Faith Hill.
Yeah, and her character does seem very resilient. So I imagine that, you know, she's got to be affected by the trauma of what she's had to do, but she seems like she suffered loss before, like when her sister was there. Well, she did just lose her sister for one, and she's been soldiering on, and her sister mentioned how many children she lost, and I'm sure she was there for that. So I feel like she'll go through it, but she'll bounce back pretty fast.
I like the little detail of like the scratch on her face or the blood running down. I was like, it didn't show us exactly where. Was it the woman pulling her? Was it her horse that caused it? Was it the scratch, literal scratch marks? But it was, just sitting there, blood running down, and just her sort of in shock, and not wiping it. But yeah, all very well done. And like I said, literally a baptism. The whole group will be, I think, dramatically different going into the next episodes. Um, and yeah, we'll see what conflict arises. That
Yeah,
is my
because
note.
now
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that because now they know that everything that Sam Elliott was saying about how hard this journey is going to be, he wasn't bullshitting, because all these people who thought he was fucking around when he was telling them to lighten the load, do these things, now they're like, oh shit, he wasn't fucking around. Like, he's made this journey before and he means it. This is shit just got real fast.
Yeah, and there's no going back. Literally, like you've committed. This is your life now, and that's it, man. Any other thoughts about anything in the episode?
I wonder what old school stuff that we haven't even thought of, because it's no longer a problem for us, is going to trip them up next. Like, are they going to be eating off lead plates, or what's going to happen next? Because the whole river thing was super unexpected, but there was a lot of drama around that river just because of, like we said previously, it's something that we would think of, like, okay, so you have to cross a river. Like, what's the worst that could happen? They definitely showed us.
Probably storms, or I could think of some weather things.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
Snow.
Well, that's that. Yeah, I think once that hits, that's probably going to be a couple episodes right there.
Yeah, if they get a winter, because they mentioned winter, and if they get like snow or a winter storm, and it's wet and it's the temperature is as low as it can get in winter, like, yeah, they're very exposed to the elements on this journey. So I guess you're right. Nature is their biggest foe on this journey.
Just from Oregon Trail itself, I haven't seen them circle the wagons yet. And I don't mean that like to be a smartass. They've basically been this line of wagons trying to get from point A to point B. They haven't been out in the prairie yet. You haven't seen the Native American Indian threat yet. There's still a lot of that to come. And I've said it and joked, but we've had smallpox, we've had the dysentery, but we haven't had cholera. I am curious as to the weather threat and just the illness kind of sickness threat. And I think that those things are still the big outliers. Now, there is other bodies of water. I'm sure there's other rivers to cross. Not a lot of big ones between here and the end of the journey, but there still is so many things that are.
I just want to hear Sam Elliott say, "The boy's got a fever. We got to leave him behind."
Like, don't you go near him. If you go near him, you're not on this journey anymore.
You leave him a hunting knife and some water. If he makes it, he makes it.
Make your choice, James.
That wagon becomes the last wagon. Like,
we got to burn the wagon.
But yeah, it's been a interesting show. I don't like that they took a week off. But oh well. Here we are. Any other thoughts?
Nah.
That's all I can think of.
So yeah, we will be doing these every week. Episode number 5 next week. I did check; it should be up. I'm assuming they took the break for the holiday. So yeah, appreciate everyone listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye.